Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shiloh Duncan Bessariel. I am the Associate Director for Special Education. I am joined here today by my colleagues at the California Department of Education working in intensive, and also our technical assistance partners from the System Improvement Leads and Supporting Inclusive Practices. And we will do introductions in a little while, but I did want to let you know who else was on the call. Well, again, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be walking through the process for our monitoring this year in 2022 with our intensive LEAs. We're going to be answering, I think, three main questions that you have. How did I get here? What do I have to do? And when am I done? So, okay, so a couple of quick just logistics pieces of information. So first of all, I'm going to ask you all put any questions that you have as we go through into the Q&A and not the chat. The chat tends, especially with so many people on the call, tends to go very quickly, and it's hard for us to make sure we're capturing all people's questions. And so we ask that you just click on the Q&A, which is a function down at the bottom of your screen. It will open up a window, and inside of that, there'll be the opportunity to answer questions, and folks will answer questions as they go if they see them. So, Edith, you get the prize for asking the second most common question we get in our webinars, which is, you're recording this. Are we going to get it? Yes. So what we will be doing is we will be sending this recording out to folks probably, hopefully by the end of this week. We do have a holiday on Thursday, so that does make things a little bit harder. But we are recording, and our intent is to send it out to all the registered attendees. We have to ensure that the closed captioning is complete, so that's what takes a little bit of time. So the most common question that we get is, you're showing a PowerPoint. Are you all going to be sending us this PowerPoint? So yes, at the end of this meeting today, we are going to send the PowerPoint to all the registered attendees. It might go out tomorrow morning, so if you don't get it this afternoon, you will get it tomorrow morning, but we will send this PowerPoint to everyone who is attending today and all the registered attendees. So those are the two most common questions we get, so I hope we answered those right out the gate. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening here. What is this new thing that I'm hearing about? Why am I here today? Which is probably the most common question we're going to get. So the work that we do at CDE is going to really be focused around 4 pillars. And this is important for you all to understand because it really impacts the way that we select LEAs for monitoring. So our 4 pillars is that we want to make sure students are in the right placements, that's least restrictive environment. They receive the right supports, and they have access to high quality instruction. And that's all including equity as a part of our work. So these 4 pillars really lead to what we believe is the first step in our theory of action, which is if we address these areas, then we'll see increased learning, we will see a reduction in behavior problems, and leads to graduation and post-school outcomes. So I think we are really excited to start a monitoring process that is focused not on check the box elements, but really focused on how we can improve outcomes for students with disabilities. So what does this look like in our monitoring when we talk about our 4 pillars, when we talk about creating the conditions for change? We have within our monitoring system 3 levels, or 3 areas of monitoring: universal, targeted, and intensive. And even within those, we have levels. So you all are selected here because you're intensive levels 1, 2, and 3. And that means that you have some very intensive needs around those placement issues, those school climate issues, and those achievement issues. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that occurs. So this year, we're identifying LEAs for only 1 improvement activity. That doesn't mean there won't be any compliance, but it does mean in terms of performance, we want LEAs to focus on only 1 area. So LEAs who are selected for significant disproportionality, they'll only be working on that. LEAs who are selected as having an intensive need for FAPE and the LRE, those are the placement, achievement, and climate areas, they'll only be working on that. LEAs who are not significantly disproportionate and who are not intensive will determine if they're disproportionate, and if they're disproportionate, we will be addressing their, they will only be addressing disproportionality. And if they are none of those things, they will be focused on compliance. And our compliance areas of focus this year are on-time IEPs and on-time assessments of eligibility. And so it's important that you all know that you all are here because we've identified you as not being significantly disproportionate, but still having an intensive need for those FAPE and the LRE indicators. So how is this determined? So we identify, we look at the data for some specific areas: achievement, school climate, and placement. And we look at 6 total categories: the percent of students meeting or exceeding standards in math, the percent of students meeting or exceeding standards in ELA, the percent of students suspended, the percent of students chronically absent, and the percent of students with disabilities in a regular class greater than 80% of the day, and percent of students in a regular class less than 40% of the day. I missed that 40%. I think it's actually bumped down on the next line. We'll get it corrected for when we send it out to you. So these 6 categories are what we use to begin to calculate the intensive need. So let's talk a little bit about how we do that. So LEAs are ranked for each category by percentile. So we look at all the LEAs in the state and we say, okay, who's the bottom 10%, who's the bottom 10 to 20%, and we rank the LEAs based on how well they're doing for their students with disabilities in each of those 6 categories. Then we create an average percentile rank that's calculated for each LEA. And then the bottom 10% of LEAs across these 6 indicators, these 6 categories, are selected for intensive. So LEAs in level intensive level 1 are have the lowest rank for the lowest 8 to 10% of LEAs for those 6 FAPE and the LRE indicators. Level 2 is 4 through 7.99% of LEAs, and level 3 is 0 to 3.99% of LEAs in those 6 indicators or categories. So some of you might be questioning, I saw a couple of questions in the chat saying, wait, well, our current data, there might be something with it. Is this a real thing if the data is indicating something else? So for you all, and we will be sending out today the data because I think folks want to be able to have that. This data is actually a little bit older, and I know that feels a little bit frustrating. The data that we used for this calculation is the last time we had a full year of data for all of these categories, and that would have been 18-19. Now, again, the districts who are identified are the ones who were the lowest performing districts in these 6 categories combined. And so one of the things that we have been talking a lot about is, okay, so if we don't have achievement data because we haven't been doing statewide assessments for a couple of years, what do we do to assess? How do we assess? How do we look at that? How do we know that our students are doing well or they're still struggling in those LEAs? And so for our purposes, we decided it's better to err on the side of caution and say, you know, if you were an LEA who was really struggling in these categories in 2018-19, chances are you are still really struggling in some of these areas and you could use some intensive supports. And so we're going to be providing that to you. We hope that you all see that these activities that we're going to be going through are not compliance focused. Are there some compliance elements to them? Yes, but they're really about supporting LEAs for improvement. And I think you'll see that as a really significant change in the way that we monitor LEAs moving forward. So our perspective is that, well, LEAs probably still need a lot of support if they were in the bottom 10% of all LEAs in these 6 categories. And so we want to still provide them. Although I will tell you that if you go through your data with your TA provider or your CDE support staff and they say, and you say, you know, we're just not there anymore. We've made amazing strides and our students, it's just not telling the correct story anymore. We can definitely have that conversation, but I think it's really worth the opportunity for you all to look through the data and walk through our new monitoring process to see where are you at today, absent a significant level of statewide data that we haven't had for 2 years. Okay, so our new monitoring process, I've been alluding to it a little bit, is called the Compliance and Improvement Monitoring Process. It's going to be also referred to as the CIM, C-I-M. And it's really, although compliance is part of it, it's the improvement that's the center of everything we do. And what you will see that's significantly different from our previous monitoring process is, number one, the focus on improvement and the focus on performance. But number two, you will see that our support for LEAs is really graduated. In the past, if you were in targeted or intensive or in comprehensive review, you basically got the same amount of support as everyone else in that same category, or as everyone else in comprehensive review, you would receive the same support. Now we're really changing the way we look at how we support LEAs and created a graduated system to meet LEAs where they're at and support them where they need. And that's going to be something that's really different. And that's why we want improvement to be the center of everything that we do. So you may be asking yourself, so who is my support team? You talk about this whole support thing. What does that mean? So in intensive, you will be working potentially with a TA provider and a CDE staff, or just with our CDE staff to walk you through the compliance and improvement monitoring process. So level one, so if you're intensive level one, you'll be working with our system improvement leads and CDE staff. The system improvement leads will be walking through some of the activities. The CDE staff will be walking through some of the activities, but they will be working closely together. Level two, intensive level 2 LEAs will be working with our supportive inclusive practices project and also with CDE staff in that same combined effort. And then LEAs who are in level 3 will primarily be working with CDE staff, although we may call in additional TA providers if it's needed. But the primary point of contact will be your CDE staff support. So who is that? So join with me today. We have 2 administrators from the Focus Monitoring and Technical Assistance units. And they were probably listed in your letter. They're definitely listed on the website. And they are in charge of our Focus Monitoring and Technical Assistance Units 1 and Units 4. So join with me today is Jack Brimhall. Jack, do you want to give everyone a hello?
Hi there. I'm Jack Brimhall, as Shiloh said, and I'm the administrator over FMTA 4, and I'm happy to be here, and always reach out if you have any questions.
And then also joined with us today is the administrator over the Focus Monitoring and Technical Assistance 1, Barbara Gaskin. Barbara, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody. And yes, I am the partner of Jack, and we together monitor the intensive LEAs. And so I am with FMTA 1, and it's nice to be here today. Look forward to working with everyone.
And then also you will see here, and please don't worry about taking pictures of this or trying to write down very quickly who your person is, but because we will be sending this out to all the registered attendees today. But you will see listed here all of the CDE staff by county and region, so that you will know who your CDE point of contact is as you move forward in this process. And then in addition to that, we are joined today by our technical assistance providers who will be supporting both level 1 and level 2 LEAs. So supporting level 1 will be our system improvement leads. And I'm joined here today by those leads, Leah Davis, Heidi Hayda, and Jennifer Yales. Leah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So good afternoon, everyone. Nice to join you this afternoon. We are very excited. I'm Leah Davis, Executive Director from Riverside County, SALPA, and part of the System Improvement Lead Project. So we are very excited to be part of this process, and we'll be prepared, ready, willing, and able to support each and every one of you that is identified for level 1 of intensive monitoring through the different processes. As Shiloh shared, there will be a number of different activities, and we will be prepared to share, to work through those with you. Wherever you are, we're going to be beside you. So thank you.
And then also joining me today is folks from our Supporting Inclusive Practices project, who will be supporting our level 2 intensive LEAs, Kristen Brooks and Kevin Schaefer. Kristen, did you want us to introduce you and your project very quickly? Oh. Go ahead. I think you're, there you go.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kristen Brooks, Executive Director with the Supporting Inclusive Practices Project. And welcome, just to echo what Leah said, we are here to support you. Kevin and I and the rest of our team, we're ready to just dive in and help you move forward.
So those are the technical assistance providers that are going to be supporting you if you're in levels 1 or 2, and they may also engage with some of the level 3 LEAs if we determine that it's necessary. But in partnership with CDE, they will be helping you through the compliance and improvement monitoring process. So someone did ask in the chat, just a reminder, if we could get everyone to please put your questions in the Q&A. It just helps us a little bit, but I can definitely answer that question about is intensive level 1 the lowest level of intensive? And yes, that it is the lowest level. So levels 1, 2, and 3 are sort of graduated. So the higher level you are, the more intensive that we see your need. So we've answered the question, why am I here? Who will I work with? Let's answer the question about what do you want me to do? What do I need to do? And so what is the CIM process itself? The CIM process is a 3-step process to help LEAs identify their needs, focus their needs into a single plan that is really going to identify 1 or 2 high leverage areas. So the times of the 10-point plans, we used to call them SEPs or PIRs, those are going away. And they will be replaced by this process. And we really want districts to begin to look at their data, look at where they're at, look at input from parents, and begin to determine what's happening here. And that's really our step 1. Step 2 then looks at why is this happening? A root cause analysis, a prioritization, and a theory of action. And step 3 is the plan. How can we as the LEA address it? And how can we as CDE support that improvement? So in a little bit further down, and we're going to talk about each one of these steps. We're going to be talking a lot about step 1 today, because that's the first thing you all will be working on, is we call it gather and inquire. And we want LEAs to begin to ask what is happening? What do we see? What does the data tell us? So there's going to be a data drill down practice in which LEAs are looking at local current data. So we know that the data for selection was used from the most recent complete set of data that we have. However, I will say we want LEAs to go through a practice of taking their current data and analyzing it. Even though we may not have it at CDE, you can use some of the systems that we built to be able to analyze your current system of data. We want LEAs to look at their infrastructure. We want to see how is it working for them? Do they have what they need in place to make improvement? We'll want LEAs to look at the educational benefit. Are they building IEPs in the best way to ensure educational benefit for students? We'll want you to listen to the voices of parents. And we will definitely want you to look at some policies, practices, and procedures to determine, does the compliance tell you something about what's happening in your LEA? Second, we will want districts to ask why. Why is this happening? Why do we see these practices? Why do we see these non-compliances? Why do we see this data? And that's going to be through an integrated root cause analysis, an initiative inventory to determine, is there something that we need to keep? Is there something that we need to stop? Is there something that we need to start? A prioritization of saying, we have a lot to work on right now. What can we work on right now that's going to have the greatest impact? And then finally, a theory of action or a framework to really provide that structure for your improvement over the long term. And then step 3 is that development of an improvement plan. We want districts to develop a plan. And I know you all are asking, wait a second, are you going to require this in 6 weeks like you have before in the past CDE? I promise we will get to the when. We're just going to dive a little bit deeper into the what. So let's talk a little bit about the gather and inquire phase step of our process and the activities within it. So the data drill down the purpose is to review current data. Like I said before, we don't have current data at the state, a current complete set of data to look at to determine how the trends in the LEA. So we have the opportunity to use some of the resources that we funded for you to review current data. And so how will this occur? You will access the data in the Improvement Data Center, you'll upload your data, and you'll review your data with your TA provider or assigned CDE staff, and you'll record your findings. We are going to provide you training and access on how to walk through that process, how to upload your data, and what you should be seeing. And you'll be working closely with your TA providers and CDE staff to help you in that analysis process. Second, we want the LEA to go through an infrastructure analysis. So determine, do we have the right things in place? A lot of times LEAs have a lot of plans for improvement, but their infrastructure just isn't ready for improvement yet. They have work to do either in policies and procedures, they have work that needs to be done in some of their fiscal areas, some of their personnel, in order to ensure that they can have lasting improvement. This infrastructure analysis that we have created with the California, with CCEE, California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and the WestEd, helped us to really identify what are the key basic infrastructure needs that an LEA must have to really create that foundation for improvement. So you will complete this infrastructure tool. There's a couple of ways that you can go through it. And there's an online version and there's a PDF version. You'll review your outcomes with your TA provider or assigned CDE staff, and you'll record your findings. We'll also walk you through an educational benefit process, and that's really to review the practices in the LEA that determine, are the educational needs of your children being met? And maybe there's issues in that. So how will this occur? You will access the educational benefit tools and videos that we will provide to you. You will conduct the educational benefit review with your CDE staff, and you will review the data with your TA provider and assigned CDE staff, and you'll record your findings. And then we also want folks to go through policies, practices, and procedure review. The purpose of this is to determine, are there systemic compliance areas that need to be met? And so how will this occur? So you do not need to do the policies, practices, procedure review. That's usually termed the file review or the policy review. Your CDE staff will be doing that for you, and they'll be reviewing their findings with you. And so how is this going to occur? You will provide access to the student files and policy documents to your assigned CDE staff. The best way to do that is provide a read-only access to your electronic IEP system and electronic access to your policy documents. And then the CDE staff will conduct the review. They'll contact you if any questions. So if they're missing a document or they can't find something, they'll contact you. It won't be an automatic non-compliance. And then they will review the findings with you and help you record the findings. And then one of the final pieces of step one in the gather and inquire step is the parent input. We really want to solicit information from parents about what's happening in the LEA. We think that this is going to be really important when it comes to both identifying the issues, but also prioritizing the issues. A lot of times LEAs have a lot of things that they want to work on, but maybe parents can give them some insight into what they can start with to be very impactful. So how is this going to occur? So we have a special education parent survey that we created with our SEEDS project that we funded. And it's an online survey, and we're going to provide you the survey to distribute to your parents who are receiving special education services. Our goal is for you all to be able to have 20% of your parents complete the survey, and it's available in both electronic and paper submission, and is also available in multiple languages. But I do want to really stress that we do not consider parent input a compliance activity. So for example, if you are unable to reach the 20% or you're not quite there, we don't want districts to create a negative incentives in order to get parents to provide input. We really want this input to be something that parents are providing voluntarily. There is no requirement. There's no forcing, no competition to complete the surveys. And if an LEA is struggling to complete the response rate, we're going to work with them to help them get there. And there might be additional means of parent input. For example, if you already have a special education parent survey that's working for you, we'll use that. If you already do something else like listening sessions or evening discussions with parents or focus groups, that's something that we can look at as well. This is not about, did you hit 20% on a survey? This is about, are you hearing the voices of parents as you're developing your plans? So the LEs you'll conduct the analysis of the data using the reports generated from the parent survey or another type of parent survey or parent input product. And then you'll discuss them with your TA provider or CDE staff. You'll then record your findings and what you found. So as you can see, it's a pretty standard process. You'll conduct the activity. You'll review what your findings are with your TA provider and CDE staff, and then you'll record your findings. And after that's all done, we will go on to step 2, investigate. Why is that happening? So again, this looks at data. We take all that data that we collected and we begin to synthesize it and walk through a process of, okay, what is the needs that exist in the LEA and why is this happening? And so we'll walk through a root cause analysis, an initiative inventory, a prioritization activity, and develop a framework or theory of action. And then finally, the plan. And that is how will we improve what is happening? So this improvement plan, again, is not a 10-point plan. This is an improvement plan that will allow LEAs to conduct 1 or 2 high leverage activities. So it's kind of like, where can we have the most impact? What activity can we have the most impact given what our needs are? And then be able to implement that really well. So I think now that we've kind of talked about the what, I think a lot of folks are probably asking, okay, when is this going to happen? Do you want all this stuff done next week? The answer is no. We are trying to allow a lot more space in between the beginning of this process and the plan. We want to be as flexible as possible. So what we see is that that the phase 1, which is the gather and inquire phase, will happen between March and May and even into June. The phase 2 investigate phase will go from July to August. And then the phase 3, the improvement planning phase, will go from August to November. But these are not hard deadlines. So if you hit June 12th and you're still not done with the gather and inquire phase, we're going to be flexible with you. We're going to work with you where you're at. If you hit May 1st and you're all done with the gather and inquire phase, then we can definitely work with you to begin the investigation phase. So we're being very flexible with LEAs to allow us to meet them where they're at. We understand that this is a really complicated time and the work is really hard. Something we've been stressing, and I've been stressing with our staff here at CDE, is we want our monitoring process to be simple, not easy. We know that the work the LEAs have done and that they need to do is not easy. It's hard work, and we completely recognize that. So it's our job to make things transparent, clear, and easy, or simple, clear, so you all can understand it. So we want it to be simple, not easy. And that's really what we're focused on right now. So what do you need to do next? So the first thing we want folks to start to think about is, who's going to be on my team as we're beginning to build this out? So maybe you already have an improvement team that exists. Maybe you need to include other folks on it. Maybe you need to rethink your team. A lot of districts have just been trying to be very focused on the day-to-day activities of conducting the school, getting through the school day, and maybe you need to form a new team or continue thinking differently about your team. So I want to think about who's going to be on your team. Then we want you to register with your TA provider by April 4th. So that's a week from today. We want you to go to either CIL or SIP and register. So if you're in level 1, intensive level 1, you'll register with Sil at the link, and Jack is putting the links into the chat right now, so you'll have them. If you are intensive level 2, you'll need to register with SIP at the link here. If you're intensive level 3, CDE staff will reach out to you within the next week to make sure that you have everything that you need and see if you have any questions. We also need folks to please access the Seeds of Partnership. That's our parent input survey, so they can register. You can register your LEA and receive your unique name and password so you can have access to that survey. So that is some of the to-dos. After that, your TA provider or CD staff will reach out to you, and they'll begin to work closely with you on your timeline to figure out when do you start, how do you start, and with who. So this is the time when I get to see if anyone has any questions. I see that the Q&A has been very quiet, but now is the time, if you have questions, to please put them in the Q&A. That way we can answer them. I did also put the intensive monitoring email. That way, if you do have questions and you don't want to ask them now, you're welcome to send an email to the intensive monitoring unit and they will be able to answer your questions. So I did want to just quickly go over some of the, I think I answered the question about, wait, maybe we don't have to be here after all. Unfortunately, if you're here, it's probably because you received a letter and the data is based on our most recent complete set of data. Oh, so what do we need to do with our 2021 SEP plans and related activities? So they're going to be potentially incorporated into the CIM, and maybe they're an extension. Maybe we need to review them. But one of the things, we didn't do a SEP last year. We really allowed LEAs to focus on the immediate needs of students. And so some of the data that was used for that previous SEP plan is probably old. That's why we want LEAs to be looking at the most current data right now. And then how do SELPA personnel sign up to see what LEAs and TAs do? You're welcome to register with the PTA providers that we provided here or contact your CDE staff. Our intent is to include SELPA directors in the process as much as they would like to be included. We do want them to be a part of this process. Do you recommend that SELPA be part of the team? Yes, we absolutely recommend SELPA be part of the team. We want them to hear you are the first line of support for many of your LEAs, you're answering questions, and so we want you to be an integrated part of our process. Okay, I have one open question. Does the SIP project allow for non-LEA registration? I'll have to look at that. But we'll make sure that whoever your SELPA director is, that they're included as well. Thank you, Melvin. I see it does not. Okay, we will definitely look into that. So Rose asked the question I was just getting to. You all are like mind readers out there today. So how does this relate to differentiated assistance that the CDE County is also having districts do with the same data monitoring? So it's integrated for sure. Now, this is part of our required special education monitoring. But some folks might be asking, okay, well, I already have a plan that I created with LEAs, in my LCAP or a previous plan that we've been working on. How do I know? Can I just give you that plan and then not have to do the rest of the CIM? What we want LEAs to do is really focus on the current data that they have from their LEA. And the Improvement Data Center allows LEAs to upload their current data and to look at their process right now. And so we want them to be looking at their data, their current parent input, their current compliance processes, their current infrastructure, bringing all those current pieces of data together to determine, does our LCAP from the previous year or years still apply? Do we need to stop or start something? Do we need to do something else? And so it's really, we want LEAs to go through this process as much as they can to kind of walk through where they're at now. And if they go through the process and they say, yes, we're still on track, our current improvement activities is still exactly where we need to be, then absolutely we would accept however we can accept that plan. But we still want LEAs to walk through steps 1 and 2. So we have a TA, oh, Kristen was answering the question, do we have a TA, we have a TA tab where you can use the drop-down box, only level 2 LEAs are on there. So if you're not a level 2 LEA, you won't be able to go to CIP. If you go to CIP and try to register, you can't. So it's important that you know your level. If you are unsure of what your level is, you can look at your letter. If you don't have your letter and somebody just told you, show up this webinar and figure out what they're doing over there at CDE, you can always contact your CDE consultant and they can inform you what your level is. Can we email this presentation to you? Yes. And I did also want to let folks know that tomorrow we also are repeating this session. So the information that will be presented tomorrow is exactly the same. So if you've registered for both, you do not need to come back unless you really want to, and you're welcome to. We would love to see your names again. But you do not need to if you feel like you've gotten everything you need from this session. But we will be emailing the PowerPoint to all the registered attendees. And the only way you got the registration link or the link to today's presentation is if you registered. So it should be good. So are we going to be provided a username and password to access the parent survey? Yes. So if you go and register, you will be provided that username and password, but that's why we want folks to go and register. Yeah, thank you, Melvin. So Melvin's talking about the data that folks are doing for DA right now. The data is very much focused on those compliance elements. Whereas right now, what we're focused on is, in terms of performance, what's happening with the LEA now? And remember those 4 pillars we talked about: the right placements, the right supports, and the right education, access to high quality instruction. Those can be measured right now with some of our local data that you have that we don't even have quite yet. So you may have local level assessment data that you could be looking at. You may have also your most current LRE data, which we have, but we haven't been able to produce it into a report for statewide use yet. So you will have really current data that we don't have access to yet. So who do you recommend being part of the team? That's an excellent question. I think we recommend are your special education, a special education teacher, a special education administrator, a general education staff. A principal or administrator is an excellent option if you have that available to you. A general education teacher is an excellent person to be a part of this. Parents is a wonderful, wonderful addition to your team to give that voice to your improvement planning process. You know, we do want you to be aware that we are requiring, this will take some time. It'll take some time to work through each step of the process. And there will be time each week that we want the team to devote to this work. But we will be flexible with LEAs. If they're taking a little bit longer because things are just happening in LEA that they need a little bit more space with, we can definitely work with them on that. And so we want things to be as flexible as possible. We kind of have been thinking about this process, the CIM process, is almost like an IEP for LEAs, right? So it's a very individualized process. We want to meet LEAs where they're at. If they need more, we want to give them more. If they need less, we want to be able to give them a little bit more space. Okay, does SELPA need only one person to register, or does each member of the team need to register? Leah or Kristen, I don't know if you may know that.
I know on our documentation on that dropdown, you just list who the contact folks are and who are on your who your team members may be. That way, at least we have the initial information to reach out to you if you're level 2. So speaking from that perspective, you don't need to have everybody individually. We'll just start gathering that information to create a database for your LEA.
And similarly for level 1, our contact form just indicates the primary contact person. So we'll reach out to them to determine who the full team is and make sure that we have everybody on board. So just the one person.
Yeah, and you know what? If you decide to have additional members or your members change, that's always something we can change and adjust for, as long as we have someone at the LEA that we can reach out to. Are there recommended required number of members? So there's two questions there. Is there a required number of members? No. Is there a recommended number of members? I mean, I think you would want to keep it small-ish, meaning probably 10 or more people is too many for that size of team, because you want to be able to do the work together. But you want to make sure the voices of the LEA are heard as you're walking through this process. This is going to be the plan that we're going to be monitoring. The focus of our plan, I don't know if you saw that. You can show it a little bit more. There is a step 4, which is the implementation and improvement phase, which we're going to be monitoring how LEAs are doing with this improvement plan. And once an LEA creates a plan, they're not going to be creating a plan every year like the SEP or the PIR. We want to give LEAs space and time to be able to implement that plan. And so we want the plan to be really impactful. That is our goal, is to make it an impactful plan. Okay, so we are at 3:42. And I don't see any more questions in the chat or in the Q&A. Oh, somebody just put one in there. That's super smart. But I will tell you, we will continue to answer questions for a few more minutes. We're going to be here, but if you all feel like you have gotten everything you needed from this presentation, we are happy to give you 15 minutes back of your day, because I know that is a very valuable set of time. I am going to stop sharing. That way we can see faces. The CIP level 2 registration form asks for APR targets not met. Should we use the district most recent APR from system improvement data system or something else? Kristen, do you know?
I would say you're asking folks based on their determination to use 1819 data. So I would include that at the same time throughout the process. We want them to use their most current data. So the whole point of the question is we just want to get a picture of what are they in intensive level 2 for, what are their areas of focus, and then what is their data looking like so that we can start those conversations together. So what I would say is the more information, the better, but we don't want to make the registration so lengthy. So whatever information you have as you're registering, feel free to put that in. We can always add to it as we have our first contact. Don't make it, really taxing activity to register. We just want to get you guys on board.
Okay. So are we getting the link to the recording as well? Yes. So once we get the recording sort of completed, it takes a little bit for Zoom. We're going to save the recording, and then we're going to have to clean up the closed captionings. Then we will send a link to the recording out to all the registered attendees. But you will get the PowerPoint either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. What are some example policies, practices, and procedures are you talking about including? Jack, do you kind of want to talk a little bit about the file review process and some of the things that we're going to be looking at?
Sure. So there's two separate things. So there's policies and practices and procedures. So we look at if you have specific policies, practices, and procedures in place for like child fine, there's a few items. So we will want to see documentation that you have those things in your policies and practices and procedures. The file review, we looked at items based on FAPE and the LRE items. So if you've been a part of an old review, like a verification review or a self-review or a comprehensive review, you know that our item table is like 1,000 different items, right? It's based on all the different regulations and ed code. So we've narrowed that down to specifically look at FAPE and the LRE for the file review. The file review this year, CDE will be doing, and same with the policies and procedures, but we'll need to have access to those documents to be able to do that.
And that's not an activity that you all will have to do. It's an activity that the CDE staff will conduct, and then they will share their findings with you. So that's one less thing on the list of things that you have to work with. And again, we'll stay on for a few more minutes to answer questions, but if you've received all the information that you need today and you feel confident moving forward, then you're welcome to log off.